Despite how the title may come across, I did not hate the premiere of The Mandalorian. I liked it. I enjoyed it. But the question remains, are we a little bit spoiled with what we got from Andor? The quality storytelling, the cinematography, everything has a purpose. Or is this actually cheap storytelling? Because it seems like there were a few things that stood out to me that they could have been doing a little bit better in this premiere episode, and on that point, it didn't even really feel like a premiere, rather just a continuation of the story. Now, there's not necessarily anything wrong with that. Like I said, I had a lot of fun. But what we're going to talk about tonight is, are we spoiled with quality storytelling that we got in Andor? Or is this actually just a subpar show? And I know we're only one episode in. Don't get me wrong, there's still room for improvement. It could totally turn that around and take itself seriously, but I don't know. We also have a brand new segment tonight, so stick around. I appreciate you being here right now on Coffee on Korriban. Hello and welcome back to the show. First question I want to pose to you guys. What do you rate this premiere episode of The Mandalorian Season 3 out of 10? I already see an answer right there. We're going to get into that a little bit as I bring in my guests and get their opinions as well. I'm going to say 7 out of 10. I didn't dislike it. As I said in the intro, it's just... maybe I am spoiled after Andor. Thinking back to it, that show was just so mind-blowing, and I know people are going to make fun of me saying, like, oh, you're just still hung up on that show. Yeah, it was great. So comment of the week, before we get into anything, comes to us from Alex. He says, a lot of these Star Wars fans will always have a problem with everything. None of this matters. Let the Mandalorians be. Absolutely. And speaking of nothing mattering, that's a new segment that we got later on in this show called None of This Matters, and we're going to get into that, and hopefully you guys enjoy that. It's a little bit different of a kind of segment than we're used to doing, but let's say hello to the people in chat and give out some sips. First off, we got Nova Vaughn. Here's a sip for you. He says he gives it a 7.75. Aiden S., here's a sip for you, my dude. Datboy Steve, here's a sip for you. The Flying Fish, here's a sip for you. I think when they didn't know who was watching, Season 1 was actually really good, great Star Wars. I agree. Israel gives it a 6.5. There's a sip for you. Vanishing Golem, here's a sip for you. Ryan B., here's a sip for you. Aussie Star Wars Nerd, here is a sip for you. So we're going to get into some of the criticisms that I have against this episode, but before I do, please don't get me wrong. Nothing that I'm saying is from the angle of talking about this show as if it's a complete failure. There's a lot of channels out there that do that, and basically they make their money, their views, off of all of the anti-hype, the bandwagon of hating, and I don't want to do that. If something is not my speed, I'll call it out. If something is questionable as far as the decisions that they made in the production of said show, I'm gonna talk about it. But ultimately, I'm here to enjoy my time watching this stuff, and I did enjoy the first episode of The Mandalorian. So let's catch up on these comments real quick, and then I'll bring in my guests. On a rewatch, I was able to give it a 7.5 and like it. Expecting much more to come and surpass this. Definitely does not seem like a highlight episode of the season, so I think it's going to go uphill from here. 8 out of 10 for me. Definitely wasn't the best, but still a solid episode. But they need to stop bringing back characters. I love IG-11, but can't a character's sacrifice or death just mean something? Good point. No one's ever really gone, or whatever the quote is. You're correct. Aiden S. won't lie, he enjoyed the Bad Batch episode more than the Mando episode, and can't believe I'm saying that. The Mando episode was not bad, it was good, but not great. I think that's a pretty general consensus on this episode. I've heard of a lot of people have that same sort of opinion. Ryan says, did I see the Lore Stars video? I can't say that I did. Lore Stars. No, I can't say that I did. If there's anything I missed from like a recap or anything, put it in the comments and I'll have to go back and check it out, definitely. But it's good to see all of you guys in the chat tonight. Speaking of good to see, one of my favorite dudes on the internet, and I have met him in person, so I consider him an actual legitimate friend. Here's his intro stinger.
I'm gonna punch him right in the clover.
I got yeeted.
Such fun times.
Oh yes, that's still one of the best. I love it.
Absolutely.
So how are you?
I am good. I've been looking forward to talking about The Mandalorian, and I've talked about it already on Echo Base Network, talked about it on my own channel, and I wanted to come on and talk about it with you now.
Yes, absolutely. And we were talking a little bit behind the scenes before we started the stream, and that we have a little bit different of opinions on this show, whereas I'm coming at it from a little bit more critical, a little bit more of a what could they have done better aspect of it. You're going to kind of counter that and come at it from a little bit of a different perspective. Why don't you elaborate on that real quick?
Okay, so addressing the title of the stream, is Mando cheap or are we just spoiled from Andor? Speaking for myself, no, I was not spoiled by Andor, because even though I did overall like the show, I've said both on this channel and on my own that Andor's type of storytelling just wasn't for me. By contrast, the Mandalorian storytelling, being more action driven, is my thing. And so from that standpoint, I was looking forward to Mando Season 3 more than I was Andor, and I did end up liking this episode of Mando a little bit, not by much, a little bit more than I did Andor. And I'm kind of with you. You said it. I give it a 7 out of 10 for this episode. But I'll just leave it there for now.
Well, I totally understand where you're coming from. It's less of the quality of said episode or scene, it's more of how they tell the story and kind of the style that they're going for. Whereas some people might have really liked Star Wars Visions in that anime style, regardless of the content of the story. They just appreciate the type of storytelling. So I totally get that, where you're coming from. Let me get the opinion of my next guest. If I can find a stinger for him, I don't think I have one. Oh, this is terrible. I'll punch him in the clovers too.
I'm gonna punch him right in the clover. I got yeeted.
Hey,
Hello.
Susty.
How's it going, Master Paul?
You barely qualify for the beard council with your fake mustache.
This is real.
How you been, man? I ain't seen you in forever.
Dude, not bad. Not bad. Just chillaxing. Ready to talk some Star Wars.
All right, real quick. Mando, Chapter 17, The Apostate. Rating out of 10. Go.
6.5.
All right.
Okay.
I can dig it. Let's see. Star Wars has become a creature of the week, a more creature of the week than anything. Yeah, it seems like that a little bit. That's one of the points that we'll get into a little bit later that I have wanting to talk about this episode was, what was the plot of this episode? And I don't want to say it was plotless, because we did get some major points in talking about stuff that's to come in the rest of this season, as well as some stuff that's maybe in future shows. We'll get into that in a little bit, but I don't know. It didn't really seem very well thought out from my perspective. Ryan follows up on his Lore Star comment earlier. He said he thinks fan theories ruined season 3. That's why I'm staying away from theory videos. I don't really watch a whole lot of that, because most of the time theories are wrong, and I know it's fun to theorize about some things, but it's not always accurate, and sometimes it does detract from your enjoyment of the season or the show or whatever. So I'm kind of sticking away from that this time around.
Yeah, I've been bit by getting too deep into theories on many things Star Wars related before, so I'm kind of in that same boat.
How's it going, Mr. Neck? Speaking of you, let's get to our extra special shout-outs before I forget. And these are the people that caught the keyword of the week, which was landed gentry. And those people are KG, Neck Badesh, the Matt Cave, Nova Vaughn, Glenn Kirchens, Johan Herrenberg, Andy B, and Ethan Dudo. So thank you guys for paying attention to the end of the video and catching that magic keyword. And that right there is your extra special shout out. And here is a sip for you. Always appreciate the people that watch all the way through videos. And I also appreciate all of you guys for being here. I forgot I kept him waiting. Let me bring him in right now. Where's his stinger? There it is.
Oh, it is so good. That's not where it's really good. I thought I was going to get punched in the Clovis or something.
Oh, I'm not going to
Oh
punch
my
you in the
gosh.
Clovis.
No, me and Master Paul have already been punched in the Clovis.
I know.
Got enough
Yes.
for one night. Yeah.
So everyone is going to be complaining again how you're in Super Mario Brothers World land and
I'm
not
stuck in the
Yavin
box.
4. What are you doing?
Yeah. Hey, Father Time, if you
Yeah.
punch at the wall, like right here, there's a hidden one up right there.
This side.
I'm sure
That's
Matt
funny.
Cave knows about that sort of thing. All right, out of 10, what do you rate this episode of The Mandalorian?
I liked ST 6.5, but we watched it together, so maybe that's why.
Yeah,
But
it
maybe
does
7.
really. The company you watch it with really does determine how you enjoy an episode, for the
does.
better and for the worse.
I was ready to be into it. Let me just say, I was really ready to be into it. Yeah, the sound effects are great. The visuals are good. It's not Andor, so I am tainted, but I am taking it for what it was originally for. Totally different style. I'm okay with that. If episode 1 for me is just usually just stuff that I don't understand because I don't know more yet, and they're going to give it to me in the extra couple episodes. So if they did a 3-episode drop, I think it would have been better. But for me, it's just
Yeah.
kind of like, okay, stuff happened, but I need more.
Right, and the counter to that, of course, is that The Mandalorian is their moneymaker. This is the one that people re-sign up for their memberships with Disney Plus to watch. And so the more weeks they can squeeze out of this, the more money they make. I mean, can you imagine just one more extra week of subscriptions, how many millions of dollars that is just for this one show? So I don't blame them for not doing a 3-episode premiere. Whereas in the case with Andor, they dropped the first 3 episodes because they knew a lot of people were going to fall off of the bandwagon.
But yeah, but then you get other
Catered for
ends
a
of the,
different audience.
you
too.
get up to the other end of the
Sure.
spectrum with Netflix dropping the entire season in one day.
Right.
So,
But you can also argue that their production house is way larger. They have way more projects going on, and so people are going to be more inclined to stick around, even though there are
Than Disney? I
entire
don't
season
know.
launches.
Yeah, like you
I mean,
said,
number of shows is what I'm talking about.
Yeah, Netflix has been around forever. They're this giant business, and not saying that Disney isn't, but
boy,
I remember
when
they
didn't exist.
yeah. And a majority of the reason why people get Disney Plus is to watch the new specific shows that will come out. Right,
Sure.
Mandalorian being the number one. They launched Disney Plus and they dropped the Mandalorian. Right, so that is a major reason why people will keep coming back to Disney Plus, as opposed
Yeah.
to Netflix, where it's a just giant thing and they throw thousands of episodes and movies and whatever on there,
Yeah,
and
you're
it's
right.
not really.
You
toward a
can find
specific-
some really cheesy stuff on Netflix. I've done some deep dives
like
into
San Andreas Quake.
San Andreas Quake.
That was the best
That
movie of
is
all
a
time,
winner.
right there.
that was the
Check my
best.
mug, by the way.
Oh yes, that's great. The arm.
Boba Fett
That's
arm.
fantastic. What's the takeaway? I don't think
I got
I've seen your
shirt.
name before. Oh, I should have worn mine. You should have told me. We have matching shirts.
Yeah. My wall.
What's the takeaway? I don't think I've seen your name before. If this is your first time here, welcome. I greatly appreciate it. Here's a sip for you either way.
Oh, video game.
Mandalorian
Yeah,
would be a
there we
fun
go.
video
It
game.
would
Yes.
So
I mean,
It would
yes,
be.
we've been saying this for years. If
Well,
they made
listen.
an open world Star Wars game similar to GTA without any of the bad stuff, it would be so amazing.
I'm going to slightly disagree with you there, Susty.
I
and
think
would
we
say
can't hear
frame
you.
it
You need to go
after-
away.
I would say frame it after Skyrim.
yes, I would agree with
Okay.
that.
Okay.
And there's
I've never
people that
played
have made
crazy amounts of Skyrim, so I would
mods
but-
and stuff for that.
I
So
envy you for that.
I would say that the storyline of The Mandalorian is a little bit too tailored to be a video game.
Well, then you
than
play
I
it
would
like
like
Lego
from a
Star
show.
Wars, where you walk through it.
I've been meaning to get that, by the way. We gotta
what
do
I
that.
mean by that, what I mean by that is what Israel says here. Go find the thing that helps you find the thing that leads you to the thing so you can do the thing, etc., etc., etc. That's what the show is. I don't hate it, but it isn't fantastic either. Video game.
Storyline.
I think that's what's the takeaway was getting.
Well,
at
okay,
from
so they need to
there.
have 2 modes in the video game. Then they need to have, the open world, and they also need to have the story.
And they need to have easy mode.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. Let's see. You've seen me before. I was your second super chat while you were setting up your studio. Oh, it was you.
Answer the question.
Okay, hold up. First off, I have a new video to play for super chats. I'm ineligible for super chats as of right now, so you can't super chat if you wanted to. But because I forgot to answer your question the last time you super chatted, and I've been feeling really bad since, this video is for you, and then I'll answer your question.
Your Highness, the transmission we received. What is it they've sent us?
Money.
Credits will do fine.
It's another check for daddy.
That's so good. It's so
Wow.
good.
Okay, so I meant
That's
to.
nice.
I forgot to answer what's the takeaways question when he was when I was setting up my studio and he gave me a super chat. So thank you for the super chat. I forgot the question. If you remember what your question was that I forgot,
We can go
something
back
about
to
a
it.
movie. Maybe it was like if I could choose any timeline that they could make a movie in, what would it be? That might be the question. If that's the case, my ultimate dream in Star Wars for a movie is the Darth Bane trilogy made by Christopher Nolan as the director. That is my
Ooh.
ultimate dream in Star
It
Wars.
might be too
the thing.
confusing for me to follow.
Yeah. We know how you are with Nolan films. But that would be my ultimate dream for timeline, storyline, director. That would be it. Christopher Nolan Bane trilogy. Hopefully that was the question you asked. But thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it. And how do I get rid of the comment? I have to click it again. There it is.
Boom.
Okay. What is it they've sent us? Money.
Another check for daddy.
There's another
like
check for
that.
daddy. All right, so let's get into my first point that I had of what I wanted to complain about from a logical standpoint. The first point was made by another YouTuber that I forgot. He's a smaller YouTuber. I would give him a shout out, but I can't remember his name. It was a lot of recap. I think he did the math, and it was 7 minutes of recap of just going over, like, I'm an apostate. I must find the sacred pool to dip in, and then I will become clean. That sort of stuff. 7 minutes, which equates to about 22%, I think is what he said in his video, of just recap of this episode. And that's not including the little recap before the episode starts. During the episode, just rehashing the same stuff that we've gotten before. And I know the point of it is because this is tailored towards a mass audience, and most people have not seen a single Star Wars product or production since the Luke Skywalker hallway scene. Right. Most people probably don't even know how he got his End 1. They probably didn't watch the Book of Boba Fett to see those Mandalorian 2.5 scenes in there. But it does seem like a lot of recap in just this one episode, which I think contributed to the reason why it didn't feel like a premiere rather than, just a continuation of the storyline. So what do you guys think about that in this episode?
It didn't hit me like that. It didn't feel like 22% of the thing. I know there was some flashbacks. I was really okay with those.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like it droned on, like desert scenes in Boba Fett backstory. But
Yeah.
I think it was okay. I was all right with
Okay.
it. And there's probably a lot of people that are like, "Oh, Star Wars is coming out again. I'll get on Disney Plus," and they really don't know what's going on. So.
Yeah.
True.
Which is where the explosions and stuff for the general audience comes into play, and that's
Bring 'em in.
that
And I was
has its
okay with
place.
that.
Right.
I didn't think it was too much.
Yeah.
Not to mention having all of that recap in there, because how many people were watching The Mandalorian that didn't watch Book of Boba Fett?
Oh yeah.
Although, there is one other thing that literally just hit me. All the recap that they did do, yet, at least to my memory, there's one crucial detail they didn't really elaborate on, and that is why Grogu is back with Mando again. They really... it was just a
You're
throwaway
right.
sentence.
You-
And
you
that's
are
part of
absolutely
what I
correct.
was kind of put off by is just in one episode they can't tell you everything that's coming up in the season. I know it'll come, and so I mean for me, I know that'll come, but there's a lot that they didn't do or can't do, especially when you're doing 22% of backstory.
Yeah.
But
And that part for, like, you must choose between the chainmail or the lightsaber, Grogu. All would have taken is like 5 seconds of that in that intro recap before the episode started, and that probably would have solved that question. And I don't know if it's because it's a different production house between the Book of Boba Fett and Mandalorian. I don't think so, but maybe
Not
there was a reason they
supposed to be.
couldn't
It's-
use the... I mean, it's
still
the same
John
crew, I
Favreau
would
and Dave
think.
Filoni.
Yeah, so
The
I
only
don't know.
difference is Robert Rodriguez was there for Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah, but I can imagine probably a large percent of those plebes watching this that haven't seen the Book of Boba Fett are like, wait a minute, he's got him again? What timeline are we in? How did he get that ship? So I know it's a minor thing, but there was a lot of recap, and at the same time, it does seem like there were a couple things that they left out. What did you guys think about how they got rid of Cara Dune?
I think it's the best thing that they could have done,
yeah, I agree.
and I'm frankly surprised that they did, instead of either A, just not mentioning her at all, or B, being super disrespectful and being like, oh yeah, she died off screen.
Mando, Cara Dune died 3 months ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
It to me, it seemed a little cheap, but I guess that's probably because I was looking for it. I was watching with the anticipation of how are they going to explain this, and so when it was there, I was maybe a little let down or whatever. Whereas most people are not aware of the drama that happened with I don't even know her real name, Cara Dune.
Gina Carano.
Gina Carano, thank you. They're unaware of the drama, and her being absent is not a major part of the story. She's not a main character. Now, if Grief Karga was gone, I guess he's not even that main of a character either. I don't know.
He's cool though.
I mean, there's a lot of characters I think that we won't see if they do come back this season anytime soon, and I'm okay with them not being there. So, I mean, like we keep saying, that the universe is so huge, so much is going on in so many places that we don't need to know everything, and we're okay with that.
Yeah, that's true. One part that I did really like was when Grief Karga was like, "You can set up right over there by the hot springs, you and that green little critter," and then Din Djarin's like, "His name is Grogu." He's like, "What? His name is Grogu." If you say so. That's like most people when they say Baby Yoda, and you're like, actually, it's Grogu. Whatever, sure, fine. I thought that was really funny, and it seemed like one of those moments where we got a ton of those in Andor, where it felt like the creators of the show were speaking directly to us, like, hey, there's a little nugget special just for you. Like we know what you guys think about this.
I think
but
this,
I thought that
this-
was really funny.
I think this series has a time and a place to have corny, kooky stuff, and it goes well. I think I'm okay with that.
Yes. Yeah. Again, it's not really my cup of tea because am I spoiled with Andor? Maybe, but I don't really care for all the corniness. I'm yearning for the perspective and the approach to creating that show of everything has a purpose. There's not one wasted line of dialogue. I think that's another thing that I wanted to bring up was if I can find my special banner, the dialogue. It just doesn't seem like it's very serious, and I
Where's
get
my
it. It's
shoulder?
more fun and silly. I don't know. Where is your shoulder? Work out your delts, bro.
What am I
I
doing?
I think he's leaning back like this on his chair, and it just
No, this is
melded
leaning
back
there.
into the
Oh,
green
leaning back is
screen.
even better. That's even better if I
There.
lean back.
There,
Yeah.
my
Bring this
shoulder's
over
gone
here.
Nice. I mean, about what you were saying about Andor is
Floating
like
head.
the reason Andor felt way more personal is because I don't know how it was really, but it felt like it was being written and directed by people who liked Star Wars, rather than people who were paid to research about Star Wars. You know, that's what it felt like because they were adding all these little things.
Yeah. That or people that are like, "Ooh, I get to work on a Star Wars project."
Yeah.
It's like I grew up watching the Phantom Opera. I mean, the Menace.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
the Attack of the Revenge Clones. Like it seems like Andor was made by people who are like, I have a huge responsibility to do the show correctly, and I'm going to do it as best as I can while sticking true to the way that the universe works, in paying homage to the original trilogy, and I have this huge responsibility to produce this high quality art that the fans will enjoy, rather than like, yeah, let's I don't know, Starfighters, let's
I
bring
don't know.
in
I don't know
some
if I quite
Captain
go along with
Davy
that.
Jones.
Honestly,
It's a spicy
think-
take, I know.
I think the level of passion for Star Wars across both shows is there. It's just what sort of story did they want to tell? I think it's clear by now that the creators of The Mandalorian wanted to create something almost on the level of seriousness as a Saturday morning cartoon, whereas Andor wanted to tell a serious base. I don't want to say wartime story because that's
Historical
technically
drama.
all of Star Wars, but that's the only term that comes to mind for me.
Yeah. Aiden says the fighting and action scenes in Andor felt more thought out, but in Mando it's like, oh, let's shoot 4 pirates down in 0.2 seconds and call it a day. There's no weight to life in this show. 4 pilots get blown up, it's like, oh, they're gone. 4 pirates get dropped dead in the street, and it's like, oh man. Versus every single death, good guy or bad guy in Andor, meant a lot. And so there's another difference right there, and that, again, totally different types of storytelling. It's not really that important, but just another thing I wanted to point out. Let's take a little break from complaining about this, and let's bring up our news segment. If I can find, here it is. This is the news from the stars.
From the farthest corners of the galaxy and every channel in the holonet, we bring you news from the stars.
So I saw an article on Google the other day that Google recommended to me, and it comes to us once again from Inside the Magic. And it was titled, New Reports Indicate a Return to the Original Trilogy Coming for Star Wars. And I was a little bit intrigued, because I always
As
want
am I. I'm ready.
a little bit of a return to the original trilogy. And they went in their article, they said, Disney and Lucasfilm has showcased some amazing technology in recent years. Rogue One, a Star Wars story, brought Grand Moff Tarkin, Peter Cushing, Guy Henry back to life, and paid a subtle homage to Carrie Fisher with a Princess Leia cameo. These two just opened the floodgates, and soon the impossible was possible once again. And obviously we saw the result of that in the Book of Boba Fett with all the Luke scenes, and they looked amazing. And even in the span of, what, a year and a half, 2 years between the Luke Skywalker hallway scene, the technology has improved quite a bit, I would say. Hopefully you guys would agree with that.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
I was waiting for
At the end
somebody
of
else.
Season 2, The Mandalorian fans saw a similar reaction of a young Luke Skywalker, Mark Hamill. While the face seemed a little uncanny valley, what was more impressive was the voice. Fans wondered who they cast to voice the young Luke. He sounded exactly like the character from Star Wars Episode 6, Return of the Jedi. Then along came Obi-Wan Kenobi. Figuring in the de-aged Hamill from The Mandalorian, the de-aged Harrison from Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, and the de-aged Carrie Fisher from Star Wars Episode 9, Rise of Skywalker. Each of the characters has already been virtually de-aged, so their pieces may be in place for all of them to come together. With plenty of stories set between the films and the original trilogy, there's lots of potential as well. Who knows what could be revealed at Star Wars Celebration? So at this point, I started to wonder, is there any returning, actually, that they're talking about to the original trilogy? Or are they simply talking about the technology making it possible to tell more of those stories?
Do you have the answer and we're supposed to guess?
I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but based on the title of the article, I was getting excited. Like, who they know inside the magic. They know some fancy things, and they are going to tell us about some upcoming projects.
I think we're already in that return to the original trilogy with the Mandoverse. It's just a matter of time before they bring in OT era Han and Leia.
Yeah, I believe you are correct.
And real quick side note, is anyone else hearing a weird tapping in their headphones?
It sounds like tap, 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 tap.
Yeah.
It's like someone's banging on a mug or something.
Father Time, you don't hear it?
Maybe it's me.
I think it's you. Whoever smelt it.
There it was just now.
Yeah, I heard it right there. Yeah. Yep, there it is. There it is.
Sounds like hammering.
Yeah, it
Everyone in the
does.
chat, let me know what you think it is.
That boy Steve
You guys
here.
hear it? You hear it in the chat? What?
Good to know we weren't all going crazy.
Hold on,
Sounds like it's your
catch up
arm.
on these.
Your microphone arm.
It's
It is. It is.
What are you doing? You're messing with us. He's
sounds like-
he's under the table going. Tap, 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 tap.
If you could see my left arm, you'd know what I'm. No, I'm just kidding. Cut off over here.
wait a minute. What's that supposed to mean?
Woodpeckers. Something
What?
wild is going on.
What in the world? Wait a minute. That's not what we want here. Okay, let's continue with this article and get serious on this. After seeing a slightly improved Luke in the Book of Boba Fett, audiences saw and heard something amazing in Obi-Wan Kenobi. Darth Vader, Hayden Christensen, cuts an imposing figure visually, but half of his persona is due to the outstanding voice acting of James Earl Jones. Many have tried to imitate him, and many have come close, but there's no replacing the original. What Lucasfilm was able to do was amazing. And so at this point in the article, I was pretty certain they were talking about just with the technology, we are able to revisit some of these stories and time frames in which the characters in real life, the actors that play the characters, are too old to reprise those roles. And so that's their goal with this article. Of course, as CBR notes in their article, nothing has been confirmed yet, and all rumors should be taken with a grain of salt. That being said, it's not outside the realm of possibility. As noted by the examples above, with technology improving all the time and Bob Iger's focus on quality over quantity, fans could see some amazing things coming from Star Wars soon, that or they could be seeing some visuals direct from the Uncanny Valley. Well, that was a long way around to say, hey, they have cool technology.
Anything's possible now, yeah.
Anything is possible, and
It's
I
in
guess
place
that
to be
was
used.
the entire point of the article, and we know they have the technology, but I was expecting a little bit more out of that article. But anyway, that's been the news from the stars.
From the farthest corners of the galaxy and every channel in the holonet, we bring you news from the stars.
Ta-da! I think Father Time has someone trapped underground under his desk.
Is it
someone's
still going?
Someone's tied up.
Is it still going?
They're doing Morse
I haven't
code.
heard it for a while.
Yeah, quiet down, quiet down.
It says, "I'm U571. Destroy me."
Huh.
Does no one get that reference?
No, I got it. It's a submarine.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank
don't.
you.
I haven't seen it
Was
since I was like 12, though. So.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right. We're gonna go blow up a submarine.
Yeah, they're behind the brick wall.
Wanna go slay some Nazis.
They're knocking on the brick wall.
Is someone, yeah.
There it is.
I think it's you.
Is my water?
It was like a a long
No,
one.
there's a dial tone.
Yeah, what?
I don't even know what's going on now.
We have a dial tone.
If you're in danger, tap twice. All right. So the next thing I wanted
They're
to
watching the stream.
talk about. Yeah, they're watching the stream. Tap, 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 tap.
SOS.
All right. It felt like a fetch quest. The entire point of the episode seemed to be we were going to go to the sacred pools, but in order to go to the sacred pools, we have to get IG-11. In order to get IG-11, we have to go find his memory core. That's three things right there. You have to do the thing to do the thing to do the thing to progress the story. And I'm not saying it's not gonna change and we're gonna get an amazing storyline for the rest of the season, but at least in this episode, in a setup episode,
Sorry.
that's what we got.
Chat.
Yeah.
Why? What are they saying?
Heard 2 taps.
I heard 2 tabs. Sus. That's pretty funny. So it seems a little bit like a fetch quest. So Paul, I want to hear your answer to that.
Well,
felt like
I
a fetch
think
quest.
I think the fact that this episode felt like a fetch quest, which I do agree it did, speaks to something that I've kind of gotten the sense from the Mandalorian as a whole, and that is that the story, we talked about how the Mandalorian would make a good video game. They're pretty much telling the story as if it was a video game. Go back to the very, very beginning of the Mandalorian. He starts out with the basic Mandalorian armor. Couple episodes in, he gets an upgrade. Couple episodes later, he gets the upgrade of the jetpack. Into season 2, he gets the upgrade of the spear. Couple episodes after that, he gets the upgrade of the darksaber. Fetch quests are inherent in video game type stories, so
Yeah.
it's to me a matter of whether you like those kind of stories or not.
Sure.
I can definitely see where others would have an issue with them, but as the avid gamer that I am, I don't have an issue with it.
Sure. And I guess in response to that, I would say that makes me lean a little bit more towards the side of spoiled with Andor, because now looking back at seasons 1 and 2, that's the way this series is told. It is like a video game, and it plays out like a video game. You have the episode where Boba comes back. You have the Miggs Mayfield episode. You have the ones where they come in contact with the Mandalorians. You have the one where they fight the Mudhorn. You have the one where they crash land the ship and have to fix it, and there's the ice spiders. It plays out like a video game. And so now looking back on it, maybe we speaking, I guess, primarily about myself and maybe the people that share my perspective, but maybe we were kind of blown away with these first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian because we were in such a drought from semi-decent storytelling in Star Wars that it seemed amazing. And then we got Andor, which is actual legitimate quality storytelling and less of that video game feel. And now looking back on the first 2 seasons, it does feel like that and makes it feel a little cheap. And so that, in that light, that doesn't take anything away from this feeling like a fetch quest or a video game at all. That has its place. That's what it's going for. It's doing it very well. But my personal tastes might have shifted because of what we got in Andor. And there was a line from, I forget which creator it was, like, if it's in there, it has a purpose. There's no useless cameos. There's no weird Easter eggs just thrown in just for no reason. If it's in the show, it has a purpose. And I think that kind of adjusted my tastes. Not to say that I'm so fancy because I love quality storytelling and you know,
you
I
have
need
the mustache to say that.
well, of course. So it's not to say that I need that kind of elevated intelligence in my storytelling. I cannot watch a show unless it provides that for me. It's not to say that. But maybe it's just opened my eyes to where, like, maybe this wasn't as good of a show from that perspective. From that, I keep saying perspective. Maybe The Mandalorian wasn't as groundbreaking storytelling-wise as we believed at the time.
I could see that.
No.
I don't mind the storytelling in Mandalorian. It is what it is, but I just don't like the speeder gang stuff.
Those
I mean,
moments.
that
The
level
Vespas.
of bad. Yeah.
Yes. There's
Like, I don't
So-
mind the storytelling methods. It's
Right.
fine.
So on that point, the level of professionalism, for lack of a better term, in Mandalorian, even with this first subpar episode of season 3, is better than that storytelling that we got in those shows. Now, of course, there's stuff that I loved about both of those shows. We've talked about that before with the whole Vader Obi-Wan dynamic. But in general, as far as an overall production, I would put Mandalorian above those two, as I'm sure almost everyone else would as well.
yes.
Andor inspires me to fight fascists, and The Mandalorian inspires me to buy a Grogu plush. Which one makes the money?
That is true.
Yep.
Return of
Well,
investment.
it is time for our brand new segment. I got a brand new stinger for a brand
We're
new
excited.
segment.
I got my
it's
shoulder
not-
back, by the way.
Sweet. I'm
Awesome.
happy for you. So this segment is called None of This Matters.
Nice.
None of this
That was
matters.
great.
Well, that's what it's called. None of this is real. Anyway, welcome to None of This Is Real, the part where we overanalyze a particular part of the Star Wars universe to the point where we have to remind ourselves that none of this is real. So today, I pose the question to you. What are droids? And the idea for this segment came along because I had typed out an entire script for a video. I realized it was going to be about 10 minutes long, and I didn't want to go through the effort of editing it. So I'm going to read through the script and discuss with you guys right now as a part of a segment. So if I can pull up the script, it starts off. Droids are a central part of Star Wars. Maybe R2-D2 is your favorite character. Maybe fan theories about Chopper's death count get you riled up. Maybe the incompetence of the B-1 battle droids annoys you to no end. Regardless of how you feel about them, no one can argue that droids aren't completely ubiquitous in the Star Wars universe. But for as common as they are, there is one question I never hear anyone ask. What are droids? So before we get into this, what do you guys think I mean by the question, what are droids?
I think what you mean is, are they just simple machines or are they sentient?
Yes, that is exactly what I mean by that question. And there's been videos about droid sentience before, which I say here. At first, this question might seem completely vacuous and arbitrary. We know what droids are. They're robots that are built, they serve a purpose, they outlive their usefulness, and then they are scrapped. But the question remains, what are they? And I realized in writing this script that I kind of sounded like Vsauce in my head. If anyone in the chat knows who Vsauce is, that's like, Vsauce. Hey Vsauce, Michael here. What are droids? But what are they really? Like that's kind of the tone I had in my head. So there have been many videos in the past from other channels talking about droid sentience. Are they alive? Do they have feelings? But another far more important topic in relation to droids was brought up in the Discord server by Isaac Kuo. He said, do you remember Brasso from Andor? Such a wholesome guy and a great friend to Cassian. He pointed out that Brasso is the only person in all of Star Wars, at least to my knowledge, to treat a droid like a person. Now, obviously, we have protocol droids and even the astromechs, and you can talk to them like they're people. But I don't think anywhere else do we see people treat them as people. Unless you guys can think of any examples. Because I couldn't.
I would say Luke and 3PO.
I don't
but
know.
even
He's okay
then-
trading them away, though.
Mhm.
He's just discarding them when he needs
I was
to.
gonna say Ahsoka and R2 in the Clone Wars.
Yeah, that's probably a closer example, but
Probably R2.
She is the only one that treats him like he's an actual person. Everyone else thinks he's just a droid, wipe his memory and stuff, but she actually vouches for him and stuff.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so I continued on in my script. Again, I wrote this like a month ago and I never made a video. Maybe it's because B2 Emo behaved with more emotion than your run-of-the-mill protocol droid, and thus a more personal treatment was appropriate. But I think it goes a little farther than that, because even Cassian doesn't treat B2 like a person. And then I had a scene I was going to interject in there with Brasso talking with him about saying, like, all right, I'll stay this one night with you, and all that sort of stuff. But that's what I mean by asking the question, what are droids? Are they simply tools to be used, or are they actual beings, but made of durasteel and circuitry instead of blood and flesh? Did you catch that, Father Time?
Mm-hmm.
Blood and flesh? Mm-hmm. All right. Is Brasso simply wasting his time by giving extra personal attention to B2, or is he the only one in the entire Star Wars universe treating a droid how they deserve to be treated? And I hate to draw comparisons to real-life events where people weren't treated like people or that sort of stuff, but it does beg the question, are they simply sentient, or are they persons? And if they are persons, that's horrific that maybe this is the only example of a droid being treated how a droid should be treated. And I put a poll up on my community tab regarding this and asking, like, are droids people? And a lot of the responses said, well, it depends on the droid. If it's, an astromech, that's different from a gonk droid, different from a mouse droid, different from an astromech, different from B2 or, a nurse droid. Like, it depends on the programming, which also raises other questions. Is, does the programming provide sentience? At what level does it provide sentience? What does droid sentience mean? Is it possible with an inorganic object? So,
can I cheat and use Star Trek in my answer?
Oh, sure.
Okay. So there is an episode of Star Trek The Next Generation in season 2. It's called Measure of a Man, and they address this exact topic. So for those that don't know, part of the main cast in Star Trek The Next Generation is an android named Data, and he is one of the bridge officers of the Enterprise. And I'll keep this as brief as I can, but there is the point of this episode, The Measure of the Man, is that there is a science officer, part of Starfleet, that wants to study Data, how he's made, and potentially make more of them. And he tries to coerce Data into going along with this, even though Data does not want to, by using the logic of Data is not a person, he is the property of Starfleet. And Data and, of course, his Captain Picard, backs him up on this, and this ends up into a legal battle with the Starfleet JAG officer, basically trying to decide, is Data a person or a machine? And
just for the record, that's a bad title.
Yes. So at the end, pretty much the decision is made. Is Data a machine? Yes, but he has met 2 of the 3 criteria required for sentience, at least put down by Star Trek, that being intelligence, consciousness, and self-awareness. So if he's got that much going for him, he at least has the inherent freedom to pursue his own search for humanity. Basically, does he have a soul? He has the right to find out. And I think that logic applies to droids.
Yeah.
Especially protocol droids.
It's very interesting, and it brings up a whole lot of moral questions and a lot of moral gray area. Whereas KG says B2 Emo was a companion droid. Nekbadesh says it was one of the best droids they ever made due to the complexity of his sentience. And what is that sentience? Is it the same as, people or alien races, even the alien races that people might not even consider to be sentient? Because we know there's, like, different levels of consciousness or sentience.
Yes.
As much as
Flying
we've
Frisch,
thrown that word.
Flying Frisch in the chat here goes along with it. Data, an android, was sentient enough to keep little mementos in his personal belongings of his friends, including one friend that had recently passed away, and that helped prove his case that he wasn't just simple property.
So Wally.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
as you can probably imagine, there are some major parallels to our current real-life situation with AI, with computer-made songs, art, articles, and everything else. And while some may argue that our artificial intelligence technology is far behind that displayed in Star Wars, what if it wasn't? With the way the technology tends to progress, what if we see real-life versions of protocol droids in the near future? What if those droids create art or invent something? To whom do the rights of those properties belong? To the manufacturer of the droid, to the droid itself, or to the droid's owner? And speaking of owners, at what point does the droid become sentient enough that it stops existing in the same way that a computer does, or a car, but simply a machine to be used, and it starts becoming a legitimate moral question about owning another person, even if the person is built rather than born? I know we're getting into the weeds there, but it's a very interesting question, and I also like numerous videos I've seen on YouTube pointing out how we are living already as droid or bio. What's that? Not bionicle.
Biomechanisms, maybe?
No, like what was Grievous? Gosh, why can't I think?
Grievous was a cyborg.
Cyborg. We're already cyborgs, but instead of metal arms and prosthetics and stuff, we have extensions of our brains in our pockets. It's a very interesting situation. Like many of us can hardly function.
Situation.
It's a very interesting situation. But it is crazy to think about that most of us can't function at the same level as we normally do day to day without this little device. And does that speak to our dependence on this device? Or does that speak to the power of this device as an extension of ourselves? It's just not fixed in place. Like if this was implanted into our arms and we used that to communicate to people all across the globe and do calculations and purchase things and go places, but it was permanently fixed to us, are we cyborgs at that point?
I've got a really good example of that, and that's this right here. The whole reason I have this is to aid in leading worship at church. And it's a great tool because my memory is crap. And suppose I'm up there leading the congregation in worship, but I'm blanking out on what words comes next. I can look at the slide, what comes next, and be reminded. But on the flip side, because I rely on this so much, it has made it difficult for me to actually memorize music just without any sort of aid.
Yeah, there's a good and a bad to it. It makes everyone who has a phone or laptop or iPad, like Coffee's showing right now. It's
that's this for work. Like I wouldn't be able to do my job without this. It's how I make a living, is off of a data pad such as that. But on to that point, everything we do, everything we watch, and every "Hey Google" that we say is building this AI's knowledge base. And the AI is programmed to learn as much about us as possible and report its findings back to its creator, whether that be Apple, Google, whoever the overlords are for your particular device. But it's an AI designed to learn as much about you as possible and report that back to its overlords, which is terrifying. That's the entire purpose of it, is as smart as it can be, learning who you are and what you do, so that it can learn more about other people as well. And I'm right there with you guys, because, not to frighten you, but in a way we're already all cyborgs. As I mentioned, we use these droids as extensions of ourselves. The device may not be cybernetically implanted inside our bodies, but we still use them to think, communicate, control our surroundings. And at what point will we become more machine than man? Will this come before droids themselves rise to our level of sentience, and how will we treat those droids when they do? And taking the issue all the way back to Star Wars, is Brasso the only one treating that droid with the correct moral dignity that it deserves? Or are the droids just really, really good at convincing us that they can think for themselves? So that is the end of the script that I had written. And I know we're getting really deep into it and trying to apply this to real life, but we also have to put it in perspective that I can't even remember the title of the segment. I'm sorry.
None of this is real.
None of this is real.
Okay, if I could comment for like half a second, real quick, before we move on from this is real, even though we already have
Sure.
one episode. You watch this episode and you realize it is the biggest episode in all of Clone Wars that it is for R2 having sentience. Okay, it's season 1, episode 6. It's called "Downfall of a Droid," and it's basically, Master Paul, I'm sure you've seen this as well.
Oh yes.
It's where R2 gets captured, and he himself has to fight his own way back from people who have stolen him, trying to sell him to the slipping my mind, General Grievous, right? And everyone trying to look at his memory banks because they weren't wiped after their last missions, right? And he has to fight his way back, and he has this whole battle between himself, Grievous, the other battle droids, even another R2 droid, or maybe it was R4, but same thing. That is the episode. If you want to ask yourself that question, watch it, and you'll realize.
I can do you one better. The one that happens in season 5, where it's R2 and all those other droids, and that little frog guy as they're trekking through the desert on that one planet.
Where they
one
find
where they meet Gregor.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no.
Wow.
Yeah, you're right.
Well,
We're just talking to ourselves here. No one else knows what we're talking about.
well,
But
just
yeah, no,
as long as you remember that none of this is real.
Yes.
So that's
Yes,
the whole
Nick.
point of that segment. Is it's the part of the show where we get too deep into the weeds and we have to remind ourselves that none of this is real. So hopefully you guys liked that segment. We'll probably bring it back at some point in the future. But
Awesome.
yeah. yeah, interesting.
Take a deep breath.
So the last thing I wanted to touch on with this Mandalorian episode, but what plot? What was the plot of this episode? And I know we already talked about that a little bit as being a fetch quest, but what exactly was the plot of this episode? Because it seemed like it did go a little bit all over the place, from where we started to where we were in the middle to where we ended up. Paul, go ahead. I know you're champing at the bit.
Thanks. I'm going to flip this question on its head and, at least for me, answer what was missing from the plot. And this was the biggest drawback from this episode for me, that being when you compare it to the season 2 premiere of The Mandalorian, and especially the season 1 premiere of Mandalorian. How did the season 1 premiere of Mando end? It ended with the reveal of Grogu, Baby Yoda, as we knew him back then. How did the season 2 premiere end? With the 100% confirmation that Boba Fett is alive. Did we get anything like that in the season 3 premiere? At least that I could see, the answer is no. It was just all mostly reminders of stuff we already knew. Din Djarin being an apostate, he's got to cleanse himself on Mandalore. He of course goes to find IG-11. Yeah, Flying Frisch says it in the chat. This episode is just, let's catch up on what's going on with just a sprinkling of minor new things.
Can I say one
And
thing?
blow up a monster.
Blow up a monster. That was cool. It has to have that.
The
It
guts
has
were
to.
cool.
Yes.
Like in my opinion, this episode would have been best served if they were going to make this episode exactly how it aired. This episode would have been best served to be like an episode 2, episode 3 of the season.
That's what Aiden
not
says
the
right
premiere.
Filler
So if I
episode.
could bring up one positive for it, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe where Bo-Katan was sitting was the Clan Ren fortress, castle, whatever you want to call it. I think that's what it was. Am I wrong? I think I'm correct.
Sounds about right.
I think that's
I
where it
could
was,
believe
right?
it.
That was so cool. I saw that and I was like, oh! Right? I even talked to my next door neighbor about that.
Yeah, Ethan says pretty much the episode was to fill in the majority of the audience that are casuals that didn't watch Book of Boba Fett. We touched on that earlier in the show, in that there was a lot of catch up, a lot of here's what happened while you were away, stuff that we already knew. But it to me, it didn't feel like there was an overarching theme. The big reveal, I suppose, was the Purgle, which was awesome. I thought that was super, super cool.
But at the same time, who that hasn't seen Rebels is going to clue into that. All they're going to see is just a bunch of blobby shadows in light speed and be like, I wonder what that is.
True. I had to explain it to Father Time as we were watching it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, those are going to come into play probably in the Ahsoka show whenever we get to Ezra and Thrawn. That those are going to come into play. So at least to introduce the idea to the majority of the audience, as the plebes out there, definitely makes sense. So that was definitely the highlight of the episode for me. But the plot itself, just overall, it didn't seem cohesive enough. It felt in the middle of the season. It didn't feel like a premiere.
Right.
I'm going to give it 3
Also,
episodes.
you're
before
losing
I
your
say
picture
anything.
back there.
I'm aware. Oh, this is the wrong remote. This is the right
8
remote.
remotes.
I have
Sounds like you, Father
four.
Time.
4 remotes.
My hand reaching over.
There we go.
It
No,
won't get me.
Come on.
no.
Come on.
Yeah, it won't
Come
do
on,
it.
show up. Oh.
You lost your shoulder again. Why don't you just build a real background?
I should.
Yeah.
I've lost my shoulder. It's just gone.
Well, I
It
would
comes and
build a
goes.
background if I had 2 shoulders.
A background builder.
You have to build your own studio, sir. All right. Well, is there anything else that you guys wanted to touch on about this first episode? Positive,
I'm totally
negative,
okay with
whatever?
it. It was
I've
just a
said
7
everything
for
I
me.
need to say.
Yeah, it was just a 7 for me. I'm totally okay with it. I'm not gonna. I'll probably upgrade that later on after I get 2 more episodes, and then I'll do my 3
Right.
episode takeaway. But it was all right. It was
Yeah.
what I expected. I was not. It was not any lower than my expectations. It met my expectations.
Yeah.
I
This
was
is a
okay
good
with that.
point that Ethan brings up here. One takeaway is that maybe Bo-Katan's clan is dying off, as opposed to the Armorers, which is flourishing, perhaps because her followers are only following power versus a creed that Death Watch is following. That's a really good point, and I did think that actually was an amazing scene where she's so dejected and has no hope, and like, wave that around and they'll do whatever you ask. Like, go ahead and stick to your superstition, see how that works out for you. I really felt that dynamic was very interesting, and I
Right.
do want to
And I have a prediction,
anyone
by the
see
way.
Pizza Hut's vegetarian cousin? Part of the crew, part of the ship.
Yeah, that's the one. You asked earlier if there was something that looked goofy. That's probably the one
So
thing
I
that
do
looked goofy for me.
still have to rewatch the episode on the 4K TV, because there's only so much detail I can see on my computer monitor. So I got to rewatch that and actually see the full quality of the CGI to make a final determination. But it looked really bad from my first watch through.
Okay, quick question. Has nothing to do with what you're just saying, but totally rabbit trailed it down right here. Okay. Why and when did Death Watch go from not caring about their helmets to having it on and not letting anybody else see? Because when Pre Vizsla, I don't know if he was the one who created Death Watch, but that's the first time I heard of Death Watch was Clone Wars. Pre Vizsla was the leader of Death Watch. That wasn't even a thing.
My
This is the first
guess.
time we've ever heard about it is from Mandalorian.
I would assume
I-
after the Night of 1,000 Tears, maybe to protect their secrecy.
Yeah, like as a way of, okay, we tried getting away from the Mandalore and his teachings, and it ended in utter cataclysm. So let's go back to basics and follow
Could
the
be.
creed in the most strictest of sense,
And
or at
become
least this
warriors
one
again.
particular sect did.
Gotcha. Okay.
Because remember, Bo-Katan herself is a former member of Death Watch, and she never adopted those practices.
Yeah, that would make a whole lot of sense, because they treat it as this ancient ritual thing, and obviously we don't see that in the Clone Wars, and so to have them maybe reverting back to some ancient teachings makes a whole lot of sense. If this was the teaching of Mandalore the Ultimate, and this was some ancient text, ancient creed that they're sticking to, and then after Night of 1,000 Tears, they say, okay, we need to get back to the fundamentals of our creed, because this is what happens when we don't.
I have a prediction, though, of what's going to happen with that at the end of the season. I think by the end of the season, Din Djarin is going to get to wherever it is that he needs to go, to cleanse himself and be reinstated as a Mando, and he's going to look down on it, think back to, all the time that he's had with Grogu, and he's going to specifically remember that scene in Mando Season 2 when he removes his helmet for him in that touching moment, and he's going to be like, you know what, screw this. I don't have to follow your ancient teachings anymore. If I don't want to wear my helmet, then I'm not going to.
I mean,
And who
Greef
knows,
Karga-
that could spark other Mandos to do the same.
Yeah.
I mean,
What do
Greef
you guys
Karga
think
gave him a
about
pretty
this
sweet
question?
deal.
Yeah. What do you guys think about this question? It's not Death Watch, it's the Children of the Watch. Are they the same thing or are they different?
I think we need more clarification on that.
I agree. I'm open to whatever they have to show me because I'm not ultra invested in this show, unlike Andor. So I'm open to it. I'll be okay with whatever. I do think Chapter
Watch is
18
cooler,
is
man.
going to be a lot better than this non-premiere.
So you just said
It-
something that made me think. I was really invested in Andor and I was waiting week to week to continue what was going on. This one, I'm not invested. I'm still waiting week to week, but it's just, I'll take it. It's
Yeah.
totally different.
That's
I have
where I
zero
am,
desire
too.
to wake up at 3 a.m. I'll say that.
Well, that's me anytime.
Yeah.
But real quick, can you highlight what Ethan Dew just put in the chat? Because I have a really funny analogy for that.
I'm sorry, say it again.
Can you highlight what Ethan Dew just put in?
Ethan Dudo.
Yeah. So
Dudo.
here's what comes to my mind. The normal Mandalorians are like, let's say they're your standard branch of the Pentecostal church, and yet the Children of the Watch are the super hardcore ones that believe in waving snakes around the church. Which is real, by the way.
I know. You were exactly correct. That's really funny. Well, I mean, I gotta eat, I have to eat my pizza, sir. Yeah, that's a good analogy. That's really funny. So I think we'll leave it there. I think the main takeaway is this type of storytelling suits itself well to a majority of the audience, and some people like it more than others. Is this going to be an ultra high caliber quality show? No, it's not in the same vein that Andor was in, where it puts character development, drama, realism at the forefront. That's not the point of this show. The perspective I'm having for the rest of watching this season, am I having fun? Did I have fun in this first episode? Yes. Things that I would have done differently? Yeah, but I think we can all agree that it wasn't the best episode we've ever gotten, but it wasn't awful. I think we're going to leave it there. Any final words from any of you guys as we wrap it up?
Yes, final thought. What you were saying about the episode being pretty good, but not like the best one ever, is it totally popped into my head. For many of the other pilot episodes for the other series, it's been like you're on the edge of your seat, you're watching, you're like, man, this is so cool, and then the screen hits black and you're like, no, that's the end, right? That wasn't the case for this one, at least for me and Father Time.
Correct.
It was like, oh man, it's over, let's wait next week. It
Yeah,
wasn't
you'll see.
no.
Yeah, you'll see in my reaction. It was like I wasn't even anticipating the credits, and then it hit, and I was like, all right, that's
Yep,
it.
it's over.
Yeah.
That's it. And there was a feeling of I'm okay to wait another week.
Yeah.
So that is where we're gonna leave it for tonight. Father Time, Master Paul, anything else?
None of this is real.
We'll
Holocron
see.
is cereal.
We'll see what happens next week. But if I can plug something real quick, this coming Sunday, if I can get my hands on a copy of the audiobook, I'm going to be continuing my journey through the EU books. I just finished the Thrawn trilogy, and so I'm going to be continuing through the New Republic, and I'm going to be talking about the Star Wars Jedi Academy books. So if I can get it read in time, we'll be talking about that this coming Sunday, along with my review of Mando Season 2. And this coming Friday, I know I have been saying it, and it hasn't been happening, but I'm sticking to it. This coming Friday, Animation Friday, is back, and we are covering Star Wars Rebels. And of course, Tim, if you're available, you're welcome to be part of that.
Cool. It's always up to if I have availability. But yes, I know the invitation's always open, and as well as the invitation to you on this show is always open. Father Time, always appreciate having your facial hair around here. Sus T, I'll let it slide this time.
Thank you.
Master
I can get
Paul,
another one if you want. It takes me like 5 seconds to grow it.
That's fine. Just
This is all I need.
so. All right. Well, I appreciate you guys coming on tonight, and everyone in the chat. I appreciate you guys all stopping by. What's the takeaway? Again, thank you for that super chat you did the other night, and hopefully I did answer your question tonight. I felt bad about that since that studio setup
did.
stream. But
We were talking
You
about
mentioned
that
it
since
multiple
then.
times. Yes.
all right. Well, everyone that came by, just thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed the show. Hope you enjoyed the new segment. None of this is real, or was that it? None of this is real.
Yes. Yep.
I can't even remember
this
my
is
own
real.
None of this is real.
segment. So
This
anyways,
is real. I thought that.
thank you guys for stopping by. Enjoy the rest of your night, and we will talk to you again next Monday as we dig into episode 2. If you've been here from the very beginning, I really appreciate your time. May the stash be with you, and I will see you wherever I happen to see you in the galaxy.